All right, so let's dive right into this, what feels like a total online eruption over Mohanlal's new film.
Hill 2. Empuraan.
Called Empuraan, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you flagged this, and it's clearly gone way past your usual, blockbuster hype. This is like a full-on digital firestorm, and you've got these totally clashing viewpoints flying around, accusations leveled at the filmmakers, and then others are basically celebrating it. So how do we even start to unpack this?
I think,
That's kind of where we're going with this, right?
yeah, it's really interesting how quickly this has kind of exploded out of the usual film review kind of space
Yeah.
and become this like real-time ideological battleground playing out all over social media. You see these incredibly strong, like visceral reactions from different ends of the political spectrum. And it's the speed of it that I think is really remarkable.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what was it that really seems to have set this whole thing off? I mean, it looks like the film's release like practically instantly sparked this huge ideological showdown. And it's primarily online, as you said. We're seeing these really strong reactions from all different, political leanings, and it's escalated so fast.
I think what strikes me is just the rawness of the emotion in some of these initial responses. I
Yeah.
think it really points to the power of cinema, how deeply it can connect with people's core beliefs and their senses of identity. It's clearly hitting some very sensitive nerves.
Yeah, yeah, and here's where things start to get really interesting, right? There's certain voices online, particularly those aligned with right-wing ideologies, have come out with some pretty serious accusations. We're talking about claims that the director Prithviraj Sukumaran basically deceived Mohanlal and a lot of his fan base. I mean, I even saw this one Facebook page, Sanatana Dharma, calling it a straight-up betrayal, and then you've got Hindu Post labeling the film Hindu-bashing propaganda. That's some pretty strong language right from the get-go. Yeah, no, and I think what's interesting there is the sense of like personal offense that's being expressed, this feeling of betrayal that goes beyond just disagreeing with a film.
Yeah.
It suggests that certain viewers felt like a set of values or beliefs that they hold dear were either being misrepresented or actively attacked on screen. And that Hindu bashing propaganda label, whether it's accurate or not, really signals a strong perception that the film is critical of Hindu beliefs or practices.
And to add to this whole thing, Pratish Vishwanath, who founded the Hindu Seva Kendram and is a known supporter of the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance, he's also jumped into the mix. He's actually claiming that the filmmakers had some sort of hidden agenda now. The details of this alleged agenda haven't been clarified, which seems to be driving even more speculation and just, intensifying those reactions around the film. It's almost like a mystery playing out alongside the movie itself. Yeah, that lack of specific detail around the hidden agenda, I think, is telling in and of itself. It creates this kind of vacuum that allows for a lot of interpretation and speculation, particularly among those who are already predisposed to, see the film negatively. It becomes this sort of undefined threat onto which viewers can project their own fears and concerns.
Right. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit and look at what's happening on the other side of things. We've also got left-leaning voices on social media engaging with the film. Now, initially, it seemed a little cautious, but then they really jumped in with some enthusiasm. There's talk of, praising Prithviraj for bold storytelling, and some are even suggesting he deserves some kind of recognition for his courage, especially given how sensitive political themes can be in Indian filmmaking.
I think it's interesting that the immediate framing is around, boldness and Prithviraj being brave. And I think that implies a perception that the film has taken a real risk, perhaps, by challenging dominant narratives or powerful interests. And I think in the current socio-political climate, that kind of perceived risk-taking is often seen as something worthy of praise.
Yeah, and we've also got Banish Kodieri, the son of a former CPM state secretary, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, adding his voice to the conversation. He's expressed admiration for what he sees as the filmmaker's audacity, but it is interesting to note that some observers have pointed out that while the film seems to critique right-wing and BJP viewpoints, it doesn't necessarily go all the way in the other direction and endorse a particular left-wing ideology. In fact, I saw this one comment that really stuck with me, suggesting that the left's own ideology might actually be largely absent in the film's narrative.
That's a really interesting point, I think, and it speaks to the potential complexity of the film's message. It would be easy to just kind of categorize it as simply taking one political side over the other. But the fact that it's not being universally embraced by one particular ideological group suggests that its critique might be more, targeted or nuanced than a full-on endorsement of a specific opposing viewpoint.
Yeah.
So it definitely raises questions about the filmmaker's real intentions and the different ways in which audiences are making sense of their work.
Now, here's another interesting wrinkle. While these two main ideological camps are really going at it, online supporters of the Indian National Congress seem to be taking a bit of a different approach. I noticed that former MLA VT Ballram even chimed in with a bit of humor, coining this term saffron comrade. So that adds yet another dimension to the conversation, almost like a third, slightly removed commentary track on the whole unfolding drama.
That term saffron comrade, it's so loaded, and it really speaks
Yeah.
volumes, doesn't it? I mean, saffron is often associated with Hindu nationalism and the right wing, while comrade is a term, traditionally used by left-leaning groups. So putting those two together suggests this idea of, a blurring or even a strategic manipulation of these ideological lines. It's a clever, almost satirical way of commenting on the perceived political leanings within the film and the reactions that it's provoked.
Okay, but hold on. There's another twist to all of this. I actually came across a totally different interpretation offered by one viewer. The idea is that Prithviraj might have deliberately made the film initially appear to be critical of certain, religious extremist groups, perhaps, to draw in a right-wing audience, and then the theory goes that the film kind of subverts those expectations, and the outrage from that audience is then used to generate even more buzz and attention for the movie. So if there's any truth to that, it would be a pretty ingenious, if not controversial, marketing strategy.
That is fascinating. It's a very almost Machiavellian theory. It would suggest a very calculated and deliberate manipulation of audience expectations, all for commercial gain, if that were the case. It would point to a very savvy, though potentially divisive approach to, filmmaking and marketing in today's really polarized environment. It definitely adds another layer to consider when we try to understand the reception of the film and the motivations behind its narrative choices.
So if we try to put all these pieces together, what does it really tell us, it seems like L2? Empuraan, whether by design or by accident, has really become this focal point for a lot of the underlying political and ideological tensions that are playing out right now. It's sparked this debate across the entire spectrum, and in a way, it's even pulled focus away from other important issues. At least for now, it's as if this film has become this temporary lightning rod for some of these broader societal anxieties.
I think that's a really good way to put it. It's acting as an amplifier for these pre-existing ideological currents. And the fact that, a piece of popular entertainment can generate this level of intense political discourse, I think really underscores how those lines between culture and politics are becoming increasingly blurred. It really makes you think about the responsibilities that storytellers have, whether they're fully conscious of them or not, and the sheer power that narratives have in shaping public opinion and sparking social conversations.
It's really fascinating to think about the bigger picture here. How a film can trigger such a heated, real-world debate and potentially even influence the political discussion. It makes you wonder about the original intentions behind the storytelling and how audiences from all these different backgrounds and perspectives are interpreting and reacting to these narratives in what feels like an increasingly divided world. It brings up a really important point for everyone listening. In an era where entertainment and politics are so closely intertwined, how do you personally distinguish between genuine artistic expression and, what might be a hidden ideological message?
Yeah,
It's a really tough line to navigate.
It is. And at the end of the day, whether L2 Empyrean is, a cinematic masterpiece or a carefully constructed piece of propaganda or just a really clever marketing ploy might actually matter less than the conversations that it started. It's almost like a snapshot, a real-time capture of the current socio-political landscape and how art can become this kind of battleground for different ideas and beliefs.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Could these really intense reactions to the film, regardless of whether or not they're valid, actually be a symptom of something deeper? These unacknowledged anxieties and unresolved tensions within the current political climate. Maybe the film itself isn't so much the cause, but more of a catalyst, something that's accidentally revealed some of the fundamental fault lines running through society.
It's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely food for thought.
Lots to ponder.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining me on this one.
Glad to be here.
This is The Deep Dive.
Until next time.
See ya.
Yeah.